Hi, my name is Eckart Preu. I'm the music director of the Cincinnati Chamber Orchestra. And today I'm speaking with Clarice Assad, a composer who is not only at home in classical music, but also in jazz and Brazilian folk music. And the Cincinnati Chamber Orchestra was supposed to play her arrangement of Richard Strauss' Dance of the Seven Veils this summer during Summermusik. It is wonderful to finally meet you. I think you are in Chicago right now. What is the situation over there?
It's as far as I'm concerned, I'm one of the lucky ones that I can stay home and everything, but it's getting worse than every day, it's not easy.
Do you feel isolated per se? Because I mean, composing is it's a profession that is done in isolation, unless you're like Puccini, who composed in busy restaurant and bars or so. I mean, do you need isolation? Do you need loneliness in order to produce?
Yeah, I think that goes with, you know, the animal of of being a creative person. You usually need a little bit of concentration and when you can get it. So definitely I'm getting a lot of that right now. But I do like you know, I live downtown Chicago, so I like the fact that I can usually go out and to the scene, and the cultural scene here is so rich, but now it's all dead.
Right.
So that feels really strange. So in ways, my life hasn't changed that much, but in that scenario, yeah, it's completely changed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, do you need external inspiration, or are you able to write on schedule? Like, you know, Schubert or so, he wrote from 9 to 3 and then from 5 to 7 or so. I mean, or do you actually need a certain inspiration?
Well, I like having something to write about. So living life in general, like traveling and being with friends, going to see shows and concerts, plays, everything, dance. I mean, for me, that's very stimulating, and I do miss that a lot now.
Was there a certain moment in your life when you knew that you wanted to become a composer? It's such a weird profession, just like conducting. It's like, you know, that sometimes there is a moment where it's like, I think I should do this, or I'm good at this. Or it's just a very gradual thing. I mean, how did that turn out for you?
But I come from a family of musicians, so as a child, I saw that my father and my uncle have a duo of guitars together. They could make a living doing that. So I never thought it was an impossible feat, And I had music in my life constantly because of the family and playing, at home. So it was a given. Like I knew that it could happen for me.
And I would assume that because your family is a family of musicians, there was a lot of support. It was not like in the movie Coco or so, where you had to fight everyone for being a musician. That was just something that people did in your family.
Yeah, well, that's a good comparison. Um, yes, there was never anybody pushing me to be anything, really. Like there was encouragement in the sense that, oh, music is wonderful and we love it, so let's share that. But nobody told me to practice or not practice. It was my choice. Yeah.
Good for you.
I know, right? In a way, I'm like, I wish that they had like pushed me a little further in the beginning.
So what is your process of composing now? I mean, do you have what usually comes first? Is it a rhythm? Is it a narrative? Is this a melody? How do you have like a process?
Mhm. It depends. It could be anything. Sometimes when I'm stuck in like in a rut, like you have like this, I won't say like it's writer's block or anything, but sometimes you're under pressure and I get like a little bit freaked out if I have a deadline. Then I play a lot with like shapes. I know that sounds crazy. Like random shapes that geometrical shapes like a square or a triangle or anything that can be created randomly and then later transformed into rhythm. I don't know if that makes sense,
Hmm.
but it's a system that I've kind of developed doing workshops for people who don't know how to read music, and they do rhythms by reading shapes.
Hmm.
So like the square is going to be takidimi, the triangle is three, so it's going to be takite. And then if you look at all of that, like randomly, sometimes you have a lot of ideas for melody and rhythm, and I go from that. It's really crazy.
But it is the most logical or the most organic for you to start from a rhythm.
No, not really. But when I was answering your question, I was thinking whenever I don't have inspiration or nothing is in my head and it's blank and I need to create something, that's what I go for. Like
Right.
totally random.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Do you ever use um, the help? I don't know if it's the right word. The help of a computer to develop ideas or to develop shapes and the
Well,
algorithms.
no, I'm kind of afraid of that. Because I started doing everything without the computer, you know,
Yeah.
before it became something that you go for, like when you have to write the music in there and present it to somebody. It's very nice to have the tool, but I think that if you're thinking about something and trying to create in the computer might change your mind.
Oh, it will. It usually does. But I mean that might be also the purpose, you know. It's like particular when you're stuck, or so you just push a button and say, "Oh, let's see what the computer comes up with," and said, "Nah, that's not good, and that is good." I mean, it gives you choices, I think.
Yeah,
Um, unless you're afraid of those choices.
I'm a little bit afraid of that. Yeah, I guess I'm old fashioned.
Yeah. Do you have a special project right now while you're in lockdown and by yourself?
I do. I'm writing two things. I mean, I'm finishing one piece and then starting a new one. The piece that I'm working right now is a piano concerto for, it's going to be solo piano and chamber orchestra, not too big. And I'm going to attempt to play it myself eventually. But I'm not writing with myself in mind. I'm not a virtuoso or anything like that, but I'm thinking about writing two different piano parts. If you understand, like if I can make one very, very difficult for somebody who wants to attempt at it, and then something that I can actually do in the future for fun. And then I have to write an opera for children. It's a really fun project, so I'm excited about that.
You're not like the typical classical composer, if there is such a thing. I mean, you're home in so many different genres. Do you have sometimes trouble finding your style, whatever that is, or are you? Do you feel you have like too many influences, you don't know where to go, or is style just overrated and you just go with the flow?
I think that sometimes I believe that I have a career in music because I can speak different languages, right? Inside of music. That's how I see it. If I was doing only one thing right now, for example, if I was just performing, I'll be in deep trouble because of the moment we're going through,
Yeah.
right? And I did lose an entire year, pretty much, of concerts that were. This was going to be a huge touring season for me, so everything got canceled. But I had all these projects to fall back on. So that's one way of seeing it. Yeah, I was going to be touring as a jazz musician, playing with this jazz trumpet guy in Italy, and and all that, which is exciting. But I also have this more classically, if you can call it that. I mean, because it's orchestra, because it's for piano, it's like okay, classical piano concerto, and then I have this opera that I'm going to be writing, and then these are completely different things. So I'm grateful to be all over the place. If you mean.
Yeah. No, it is wonderful if you have all these different talents. The Cincinnati Chamber Orchestra was supposed to perform an arrangement of Richard Strauss' Dance for the Seven Veils by you for string orchestra, I think.
That's right.
Um, why? Why? Because I mean, it's originally a huge orchestra, and it's implied. The answer, I think, is implied. But I mean, what are the main challenges, or what is your process of narrowing things down? From a huge orchestra to just strings, and how do you keep? Or what is the most important thing while you do it? Like keeping the energy going or the character. How do you do that? Is it even possible?
Yeah, well, the first time that I did anything like that was arranging for the same orchestra, by the way, the pictures at an exhibition. That, I mean, Ravel is one of my favorite orchestrators of all time. So going there for me was already like, oh my God, I have to do justice. So I was studying ways of trying to keep the energy and the aura of what he's done alive, but yes, you lose a lot of colors and possibilities when you lose the whole orchestra. So I think the most important thing for me was to go to the piano score, the piano version of these pieces. Like in the case of Strauss, the reduction. In the case of Pictures and Exhibition, it was the original. It was Orchestra. So I went from that version. So I wasn't going from like taking things away, but rather like, okay, what can this is the most important thing that needs to appear in this condensed version. So I'm going to use that and then make it colorful, and then go back to the orchestration, look at the score and see what was actually happening with what Ravel did, what Strauss did in the original. So take from there. But really, I went from nothing to create the experience and the illusion of it being the full thing.
That actually makes sense if psychologically, if you think I start with the piano and I make it bigger, instead of I'm going from big orchestra and I make it smaller.
Yeah, that's really, psychologically, yes, that would be really depressing.
Well, and I mean, the question is, you know, and I think pianists have now the same issue. I mean, speaking of Pictures and Exhibition, do the pianists try to imitate Ravel's instrumentation, you know, like play like a trumpet, or do they like really come up with something else, which is really hard to do because the Ravel instrumentation is such a familiar thing, and it's really hard to kind of detach yourself from that. And I figure it must be really hard to detach yourself from the you know, not being tempted to imitate the big instrumentation.
I know. Well, I remember like when I got to the last, what I did to create a lot of color was to use a lot of percussion. It was a little bit too much. I got carried away, like one person playing all these instruments, but it really worked well. But by the time I got to the big climatic moment of the piece at the end of the gates of Kiev, what I did was like I made this build up, grow like crazy. And for the final theme, it was just the piano that came. It was very interesting, deceptive moment that worked so well, because it was like, okay, I'm going from this huge version. A lot of people are playing bass drum and going like that. The orchestra is going crazy. And then when you get to the final chord, it's all the piano. It's the original version. So that's what I was trying to play with, you know, like what's the original, what's not, and how do they speak to each other.
And I think that is always the charm and the challenge of for any arranger is how much of it do I make it my own, and how much do I, you know, how do I honor the composer by making it my own as well, or how do I add something to that? Do I take something away? So I think it's always an interesting thing. And then when you say, oh, he arranged it, you know, it's but actually it's you have quite a say in the effect of the final composition. You mentioned that, you know, people asked you apparently rather frequently to write something Brazilian, you know, because of your heritage. Does it ever bug you that people try to typecast you as the Brazilian composer?
Not really. It's like I've already accepted it. It's like, because I am, you know, I'm lucky in a way that Brazil is such a huge country. There are so many different kinds of music in Brazil, and it's not only you know, Brazilian, it's also European, it's also African, it's all the diaspora of everything that you can imagine, because it was, you know, a lot of immigrants. So there's a lot of things to explore. So that if I was maybe from a very, very tiny little place in the world that had one kind of music to explore, I would probably be upset.
Well, Clarice, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to conducting your music. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chegou, sorriu, venceu, depois chorou, então fui eu quem consolou sua tristeza, na certeza de que o amor tem dessas fases mais, e é bom para fazer as pazes. Depois fui eu quem dela precisou, e ela então me socorreu, e o nosso amor mostrou que veio pra ficar mais uma vez por toda a vida. Bom é mesmo amar em paz, brigas nunca mais. Chegou, sorriu, venceu, depois chorou, então fui eu quem consolou sua tristeza, na certeza de que o amor tem dessas fases mais, e é bom para fazer as pazes. Depois fui eu quem dela precisou, e ela então me socorreu, e o nosso amor mostrou que veio pra ficar mais uma vez por toda a vida. Bom é mesmo amar em